Okay, great, great. Yeah. So here's what I had in mind to use our time today. I have a few things to start us off. I want to say actually, and what would be nice is if we had some. I'm certainly prepared to speak myself, for the whole time, if that's what works for people. But what I think really is nice if we can have plenty of time for obviously for questions, but also for all anybody else to comments for sharing, because I think it's really nice to get sort of the group wisdom in. And so as I have a few things to say, but at various times I'll particularly stop and just invite questions or others sharing. And then also, we'll see how the time goes, but I had some thoughts to do a couple of little short, little practice sessions that could come in also. So that's sort of, we'll see how it plays out in our time. And then I know I'll end by 11:20, so then you can do your normal wrap up. Yeah, so I think we're good. All right. So, we have a theme of this word metta as a complete practice. And so I realized as I was reflecting on this that there's actually a lot to unpack there. First of all, I want to, like, what do we even mean by the term metta? We may not all have the same understanding or what we're aiming for, or how much where that fits into our overall Dharma practice. And then also when we talk about a complete path, well, that's a question of, if what are our goals? What is our path? What are we aiming for? And that won't be the same for everyone. So I want to explore some of these things, and then how we can, each of us will be different, but in whatever way is important for us, where metta might fit in all of this. So to begin, this word metta in Pali, it gets translated almost, I think pretty much the only term I ever hear is loving kindness. That's a great term. That's fine. And I always, when I tend to just leave it untranslated, I just say metta, but in my own mind, I use the word love. Loving, nothing wrong with loving kindness. It's great. We'll explore that a little here, just a few minutes. But to me, love has a little more punch, and so that's just my own take. Back in the old source Buddhist texts, the word metta is never defined at all. They use the term. And so I don't know the history of how we came to use this, the translation loving kindness. But, people, I guess, who were these translators were, translated according to their best understanding of the meaning. And so for me, I feel like it opens up quite a range of how we experience it, metta, and if we're taking it on as formal practice, what in particular we're aiming for. Because to me, in all of the different connotations, I think can be very powerful. So loving kindness, it could mean on one end of the spectrum. I'm not. So I'm not making any picking sides or any judgment about all these different connotations, which is none's better than the other. But one sense of it is it's just a kind heart, and it can be, for me, actually, a way that metta rises is this idea of a heart not closing off to other people or to other situations, and that's whole interesting piece right there. You may not feel quite a strong gush of love, but what does it mean if we just aren't closed off to others, right? So that's for me, that's a question. I kind of hang out in that space sometimes. What do I mean when I say I'm not closed off to others? Where I may not, there are plenty of people and situations I could name where I don't really feel love. But so then I rest in that question of what would it mean if I just don't close off? I don't shut off the humanity of another, or know that, we're all fellow sufferers. And so what's the, loose connection of just the other human being. And then sometimes, in addition to not being closed off, what does it mean when I can have just a kind feeling? So there's more of a positive actually feeling. And then it can go all the way to actually very, very powerful states of love, which you may have experienced yourself, but we can talk about that, we'll see. But these can be cultivated just in many ways, but certainly in meditation and Dharma, you can get into very, very powerful states. So there's a range of ways that metta can manifest. It's not just one way. And I think for all of us, if we're interested in, living in a way of love and an open heart, we'll probably over time touch into all of these different feelings, right? So, so that's one thing of just what do we even mean by the term metta. And personally, I like sort of all of the above, but you can see for yourself how you relate to it. Another thing I should add that we'll come back to also in a little bit is if we're interested in consciously cultivating this good heart, kindness, loving kindness, love, part of what will come up is not only in a positive way, working to cultivate these states, but we'll bump up against all the ways that that we shut off and that we can't open in love, and we get closed off. And there may be a lot of really good inner work we can do around that to just work with what are the blocks, what are the difficulties, where do we have to work on our own kind of reactivity in a way. So anyway, this is a lot of pieces to the actual practice. So that's one piece that I wanted to bring in, what we mean by the term metta. But then there's a whole nother piece of, if we talk about metta being a complete path, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, path that, we're not all, I don't think we're all on the same path. I don't assume that. I think, first of all, this is I don't know if you use the word Buddhist group, Dharma group. Some of us will actually probably think of ourselves, identify as Buddhists, and there's a whole thing about that label. Many people who are meditators, or you could say Dharma practitioners, may not actually put that label Buddhist on, and so that's a whole different thing but we want to still take what's good and useful about all the teachings and the practices. I say that because there's a range of goals we might have. And so let me just, I'm going to name a few things and talk about it, and then we'll have a few moments to open it up if there's any comments before we continue on. The traditional Buddhist idea of sort of the goal is like, the tradition is offering up, this is what the tradition is saying the goal should be. It's kind of telling us, and it's this idea of nirvana, or in Sanskrit, in Pali, it's nibbana. So there's a whole thing of like, what's that? We could actually talk about it if people want, but I'm not planning to get into that. We'll just leave it at that. But some of you, most people I talk to don't really think in terms of nirvana, but you may, and great. So then, how does metta fit into that? We'll come back to that very specifically in a few minutes. But what if you're not thinking like that? But it's a lot of people, it's like our practice or our path is, here's the way I like to articulate it. You'll have to find your own way of thinking about it. I think of it as, how can I live in a way, how should I say this? How can I live in a way that creates less and less suffering in the world for myself and for others? How can I live in a way that creates more, you could say, happiness or well-being in the world for others and myself. That's one way I think a lot of people might relate to that. Just quality of how we're living, and living in a way that more kind. There's the metta right there. Less reactive, more wisely responsive. You feel the difference there between, whatever happens, we have a response that has a different feeling than in a reactivity. So, right? So there may be a way. Just how do we live in a way that's just more kind. And so that might be the path and the goal for you, and that may not be the same as thinking in terms of this nirvana. What about I'll just share my own personal mine my practice is in sort of I don't really think in terms of goals anymore, or but for me these days really a key part of my own practice, I'll just share that, and for whatever it's worth, is a lot about metta. How can I live in a way I really aspire, this is true, I aspire to live in a way where my heart never closes off, ever. Um, and now, um, I have, I get a lot of opportunities for to see where there's more work to be done, right? So, but I try to keep that aspiration in mind because when I bump up against places where I have ill will in my mind, or my heart does close off, when I can keep in mind my aspiration, if you will, um, then I, instead of getting caught up in like, well, I'm right, I feel right, and just wanting to hold on to my opinions and views, I have to remember back, oh, wait a minute, how does this fit into my higher, deeper aspiration? And then I can see what's needed in the moment to work with that. So, for each of us, it's kind of, maybe it's something you reflect on yourself, but if not, you may want to consciously bring in reflections, or maybe every day for a few minutes. What is you could say your path, but what's your intention as a Dharma practitioner for, what's your intention as a Dharma practitioner for where you want to aim, what you want to cultivate, how you want to live, how you want to show up in the world, the kind of person you want to be. And if we can reflect and get clear on our intention, then we see, well, what will support me to actualize that my intention, so I live out, I'm more authentically in alignment with it more of the time. And I want to pause here, and we'll open it up if anybody has comments or questions. But then when we come back, I want to actually talk about, I would say, in any of the ways that people typically think of using their meditation practice, what they're aiming for. I think, and I'll be specific on a few different kind of ways people commonly are intending or aiming their practice. I think the metta can come in every one of those as a tremendous support, or actually can be the entire practice. So we'll come back to that in just a few minutes. But let me just pause here for a minute. That's a kind of a lot of words coming at you. Anyone, a thought, a comment? If not, I can keep going, but a question, anything? Oh, well, I can tell you what I think. So first of all, I'll just share what for myself, what's worked and not worked, and maybe other people might, we'll see it. Maybe they have other people might have other wisdom about what's worked for them. Um, I find that if there's a difficult person or situation, many times it's just not going to work to just go right to that and and try to have an open heart or love or whatever like that. I just find that oftentimes it doesn't work. So what I find can be helpful is, if you have the luxury to kind of back away in your consciousness from that situation or person. We don't always have that luxury to do that, and then we do the best we can. But if you have the luxury to, like, don't let my mind go there for right now. What can I do to put my mind in the best, in my heart, in the best place I can. Who can I love? What can I love? What, maybe I listen to poetry or just walk outside if you have a nice, beautiful blue sky, or walk in nature, or listen to certain music, or be around your pet, or it could be a person, or whatever it is, situation that we go to that. And what can really get us in the best place in our heart that we can. Now that I'm in that place, and we just do the best we can, and that alone may be hard for many of us. Sometimes it's like, well, even with that, I can't get my I've got other hurts going on in my life, or I don't have a place, or whatever. That's a whole place that needs then a lot of compassion and kindness to work it. But we do the best we can. And if you are fortunate enough to be able to put yourself in a good, loving, kind place, and again, I know that's some people, it's not a judgment about it. Maybe that's got its own area for work on ourselves. But if we can, now that I'm in this good place, what happens when I turn my attention to the difficulty or the difficult person? But don't try to just go right to it, because unless you do it and it works, that's great. But oftentimes it's just too much to go right to it. So I don't know if that's helpful. And look, it may still be like we're just not ready to do that. Like if someone's hurt us or there's been a difficulty, maybe we just can't go there, right? And we have to respect that. And it's not a right or wrong about it. Like, oh, we're supposed to. There's no supposed to here. That's important. You didn't say this, but I just want to add that what I hope we can do is just be honest and real with what's real and true for us, even if we're filled in hate. We got to. That's the starting point. This is where we'll see if we get into this when we start to say we want to practice loving kindness. We have to bring in mindfulness, some concentration, steadiness of mind, mindfulness, insight. All the other pieces have to come in to inform. So we have to be able to be real and honest with ourselves the best we can. You just do the best you can, right? We can't see our blind spots. Don't worry about that. But we do the best we can. And maybe the answer is, I'm not even close to being able to do that. So we have to respect that, right? And maybe we don't start turning to the difficult person. Again, you may or may not have the option, but I'm saying if we do. And so what can we do is important. And you just assess it, that you use your best judgment and go with that. And then you'll come back to it and see, well, has things shifted over time? Have I been able to get in a more place? And you go and test out the water, but you don't jump in up to over your head. Maybe you dip your toe in the water and see and go, okay, maybe I can a little bit, or nope, not ready yet. So we have to really respect ourselves without bringing a negative judgment about ourselves. That's another way where the metta, the kindness, comes in towards ourselves, letting ourselves be, even if what we're letting be doesn't feel that great. You know what I'm saying? That's a tremendous act of kindness to ourselves right there, to let ourselves be what's the actual reality and truth without a big judgment, a negative judgment. Discernment, yes, that's kind of a judgment, but the negative judgment, no. That may be our whole practice, is just how can I be kind to myself? And for lots of people, that's your practice. Forget other people. We got to just learn to do it with ourselves. And that may be a lifetime of work right there. I don't know, but it could be. So we start with what's real and true, and then what can I start with what's real and true, and then what in it, being honest, but honest as we can, what can I actually do? And we test it out. And again, if we can't do it, it's not a judgment, but it's just a learning. We try to put our awareness in a certain way, doesn't work. Out of metta for ourselves, then we don't say, oh, geez, and you're not a good Buddhist or whatever. We just say, oh, I'm getting feedback here. Yeah, okay. What's real and true is I'm not ready to do it. And so anyway, and you work it the best you can. I don't know. Yeah. Let me just say a few. So what I have in mind now is I want to say just a few more things, and then we can also see if anything else comes up for comments or questions. And then we'll see, maybe you have time to do a couple little short 5-minute practices. In the service of practice, I do want to say at least a couple of people have mentioned this idea of doing metta practice where you repeat these phrases, right? I hate that. I don't think I'm allowed to say that. Some people love it. That's great. Actually, I had it, probably all know who Joseph Goldstein is, famous teachers. And I used to, I don't teach up there anymore, but I used to teach at IMS in Barre, Massachusetts. And I remember once I was up there teaching a retreat and I was having lunch talking to Joseph. And he said, he said something about, that way of practicing just, he didn't relate to it or like it. He had his ways he did practice. I want to mention some, but that wasn't his way. So we have to know this. Just repeating phrases, may you be, it's really a mantra. When you do that, you're doing what's called a mantra. You're just repeating phrases. Mantra practice works great for some people, and you'll know if you relate to it. But for a lot of people, it's just not going to work for you because like mantra, for a lot of people, it just is not a practice that's ever going to work for you. And so it's okay if you don't relate to the phrases. There's actually, again, if you do, it's powerful. But we want to know, no matter what way we choose to practice or are taught, it will work for some people. But for other people, it doesn't matter what it is. It's not going to work for everyone because we're all different. So it's all about finding the way that works for us. And that's true for metta. There's other ways of doing it. Well, I will make a point to bring in maybe another way here that has nothing to do with phrases. So we'll come back to that. I'll make sure we don't miss that. Nothing to do with phrases at all. It's the feeling is the object of your meditation. Anyway, I'll come back and talk about that in a minute. I just wanted to give that little teaser there so you're not stuck like we have to do these phrases. That's one very narrow way. And I know it kind of caught on as the way, if you go on these retreats, everybody teaches it, but there's other ways. I teach the phrases when I teach retreats with metta because I know it does work for some people, but I make a point to say, here's some other ways. Anyway, all right. So let me just name a few different ways we may be thinking about our meditation. I'm thinking Dharma practice, but Dharma practice includes meditation, but it's, to me, you'll see for you how you hold it. It's all of how we live life. So one way that metta comes in, and several of you have already shared this. Several of you have shared about where a difficulty came up, got the construction workers next door maybe, or whatever it is in life. It has nothing to do with formal meditation. It's just bumping up against and meeting that situation in the moment. And when we can remember, if we lose our mindfulness and you just get lost in it and can't remember, we can't worry about that because you don't even know. You don't even know you're all lost and caught in it. So we don't worry about that. But when you wake up, kind of, if that's the way to speak of, and all of a sudden you know what's happening, your mindfulness is back, and oh, wait a minute, I'm in reactivity, then we have some choice points. We don't always have a choice point because sometimes mindfulness, as we all know, isn't enough. Because what's going on may be so strong, the energy of it pulling us in a certain direction may be so much that it just takes us. We do the best we can with that. We try to bring the intensity down if we can, or bring our ability up to meet it if we can. So that's a whole big thing. How do we do that? But I'll just throw that out. I don't know if we have time to go into all that. That could be your whole practice in life, is just using what it really is the whole practice, right? Is there anything other than using what we have in the moment the best we can? There isn't anything else. Actually, it's interesting because sometimes it's common that people will judge their Dharma practice, if you will, by how concentrated they get in meditation or how much they're able to keep a meditation practice going. That's very, very common. It's a complete misjudgment. It's just a miss. But if you're going to judge yourself, we should probably just knock it off and stop judging ourselves. But since it's hard to do and we're going to judge ourselves anyway, a better way to do it, it's not by, yes, if you can get your formal meditation going, most people who can do it find it's helpful. In daily life, it can be challenging, right? Because we have busy lives. I'll come back to that in a minute. One of my favorite stories. I might have told this story when I was at that retreat in Edmonton when I was with you. One of my favorite stories. I used to do a lot of work in prisons here in California, and we had a group in one of the really, really rough prisons. We met every week, and I remember sometimes when there'd be a violent incident, they were gangs or whatever it happened, they would lock the prison down until they got a handle on things. They could be locked down for a few days or even a month or two, right? And when they did that, you were just in your cell. You fed you in your cell. I think individually, one by one, you could get out a couple of times a week to take a shower. That's it. And so that happened once where we weren't able to run our group. And then when they reopened things up, I went back and we were running the group, and I was talking to people. I said, well, how are you doing? And I know for some people it was really, really hard. Other people managed okay. And we just processed it. Then I said, how's your meditation going? We went around, and one guy said, I don't know. I just couldn't find time to meditate. He's locked in his cell 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. What has he got to do? And he couldn't make himself do it. I say that because it's not your fault, all right? It just can be hard. Now, once the meditation kicks in and we start to drop into some of these deeper places, then we want to meditate because it can feel really great. The irony, it's not an irony, but the thing is, in the beginning, when we need the support of the samadhi to help us, we don't have it. So we have to kind of get through that phase in the meditation. That can be a challenge. So it's not your fault, all right? But for people who will sometimes say to me, oh yeah, I'm a bad meditator, I can't make myself do it, and I'm not a good practitioner, I will ask the question, well, in your daily life, whenever you happen to notice if you've gotten in reactivity, do you do the best you can to let go around it and try to let go and work? Well, yeah, I do the best I can whenever I remember. When your heart closes off and you happen to be aware of it, do you try to the best you can to work with it? And like, oh, well, yeah, I do. And then I'll say, well, what more is there? I mean, that sounds full practice to me. Is there anything else you could do? You're not sitting around saying, wow, I just noticed I'm in a lot of hatred and ill will. I think I'll just go with that. I'm not going to try. Did I hang up here a minute? You might be, oh, there you go, my video. Nobody's saying I'm not going to try when you remember, right? So we're all doing the best we can anyway, so people will judge it a lot like that, okay? So bringing that kind heart, trying your best, that's all. You just do the best you can when you can remember. That's a complete path of practice in my mind. You can see how you hold it for yourself. That would really be a pretty, in my mind, a life well lived, to bring that intention in when you can remember. Yes, when we can do formal practices, it does help train us to be more present, more steady, so more of the time, sure. So that's one way that metta can be a complete path of practice. Let's just say that your practice, some of you might be familiar with the term, you don't have to know this Pali, but they use a term, it's with a V, vipassana. You might hear that. It gets translated as insight. There's a kinds of meditation called insight meditation. And there's lots of ways it's practiced and taught, but the idea is you want to bring your attention to things that are changing. You notice whatever's going on in your mind, in your body, there's lots of different ways it's practiced. Let's just say you think, well, that's my path. I want to do insight meditation. Well, you have to bring in these other qualities. Just by doing it, it will help bring the samadhi, the concentration, the steadiness of mind, because you're training your mind coming back over and over to direct your attention. So the concentration naturally comes in. You've got to have the mindfulness in there. The metta has to come in because when you're doing these practices, you have to notice when you're struggling and bring in some kind of letting go, being kind to yourself. The flip side of it is you will notice more because you're doing insight practices when you're not being kind, and you naturally, you'll just be drawn to want to let go and everything. The metta comes right in there. to the insight practice? What if you said, my whole practice is going to be concentration. I want to go into these deep meditative states. Well, you have to bring mindfulness in there. The insight part has to come in because you have to have awareness of what's happening when you're struggling, when you can't concentrate, when things are going on you need to be able to work with. You've got to bring the metta coming in, whether you're conscious of it or not, because if you're caught in ill will, beating yourself up and judging yourself, that's not conducive to your mind settling. So naturally, you'll see that and know it and have to be aware of it. So the metta's right in there in that. And if you said my whole path is just metta practice and you're doing actual meditative practices around metta, phrases or this other way I'll talk to you about in just a bit, you've got to bring your mindfulness in there. Some amount of concentration comes in. Metta can be a very, very concentrated, as we'll see, because you're directing your attention. The insight part comes in because as you steady your mind, you become more aware of all the places you're not loving. No matter what your path is, all these other pieces come in. The metta piece is always in there when we talk about it being a complete path, whether you emphasize it as the whole path itself or you're doing other emphasis in your meditation, it will still be in there. All the pieces are in there. We just emphasize different pieces sometimes in our practice, but they're all there together. You can't separate out mindfulness, insight, concentration, and metta. And whether you're conscious of it or not, you just can't separate them out. They're different qualities, but they're all in there. Yeah. So I see it's about 10:14. So we only have but this will be really quick. We can't go into it, but I just want to introduce to you the concept of this and what it's really called. And you can look this up. I think there's a teacher named Analayo, Nanlao, Analayo. If Janet or other people know how to contact me if you want the name and I can get it to you. He does this kind of practice. So if you look him up and look up his style of loving kindness, you can find guided recordings or whatever to help you. So I'm just going to give you the idea. So here's the idea. If you want, you could here you're sitting or lying down or however you're being right now. And if you like to practice with your eyes open, I think most of us probably practice with our eyes closed, but find the way that works for you. And let me just give you take a few seconds, tell you what it is, and then we can try it a little bit. And what I'm about to offer, just like phrases, repeating phrases works for some, but for a lot of people, it's just not. This way won't work for everyone because what we're basically doing is finding some way to bring a good feeling into ourselves. And then that good feeling, if you will, becomes the object of your meditation. You put your attention on the good feeling, and then you allow with your mind, you mentally just have this feeling of expanding and radiating. It's just a feeling in your mind of radiating it out either towards others. And that's this idea of radiating. And so the act of radiating out the metta becomes the practice. And then for some people that will really catch and can be very powerful. And for others, it's like, I can't get a handle on what do you mean? And they need to go back to like phrases or something. That's what it is. So we won't be able to really do it, but just this, let me just a few minutes, just a taste. First of all, hopefully you want your body to be as easeful and relaxed as possible. Some of us, our bodies don't let us have that much ease, if you have a lot of pain or difficulty, so we acknowledge that. And, we just do the best we can. If you need to lie down, shift your body, but just bringing the idea of, I want to care for my body the best I can. That itself is an act of kindness. Let me care for myself the best I can. And so that's a whole big piece, but we'll just leave that for now, knowing that that could be the whole practice, actually, of how do I care for my body. Okay. And then when you're ready, first you take a few moments to check in with what's going on in the states of your mind, the states of your heart. there might not be much going on, and you just notice that. You don't have to go digging around. But what we're really looking for, if there's any difficulties in your mind, any place of worry, anxiety, ill will, anything that's not at ease, we need to acknowledge that. And then again, because we're doing this kind of we don't have that much time, you may spend some time. Maybe that's what you need to work with right there, and that's enough. But if we can acknowledge it and learn to not push it away, but kind of let go around it a little bit, the best we can to see if we can get in a place of that's not quite as challenging to letting, can I just let things be? That's the question. Whatever's going on, can I let it be? And you just do the best you can. And then when you're ready, the way this works is you find in your mind anything that could be it doesn't have to be love, it just can be something pleasant or the feeling of love. It could be a memory, a person, a pet. Sometimes people will just think about, like, if there's a beautiful scene in nature, I like to go hiking in this particular mountain peak, or I saw a picture of this mountain peak and it was so beautiful, or music or poetry. Or if you're fortunate enough to have a person that you care for, we don't all have that, but if you're fortunate enough to have that, that could be something. You could bring a good person to mind. And I'll just offer a few more thoughts about this. It could be something you've done that was nice and kind. Like for me, I'm going to bring into my mind what the person said, that when they saw me, it made them feel just a few minutes ago, and just the good feeling of that. There, right now, I've got access to a good feeling. You don't have to build it all up. It might be a very light touch, but anything that even in the slightest bit feels positive, and we put our attention on that, and we spend some time kind of with that and marinating with it a little bit, just in the goodness. And you have to kind of keep your mind coming back to it. You might use some verbal. I know I'm talking a lot here, but I want to try to just get I hope it's okay with you that I'm not giving much silent space here. We would if we had a little more time. And you just see, how is this for me to do that? And then you might bring some words. This is kind of get the phrases in of love. You might just say, in any phrases, anything you say to keep your mind connected. You could bring phrases in about yourself. May I be happy, or at peace, or something. If you want to bring some phrases, if that helps you, that's great. But it's the feeling is the main thing. And if you were doing this at home or on a retreat, we would give a few more, but specifics, but this is the basic idea. And you would spend some time with this and then see if it might expand and grow. The feeling of kind of, not pushing it, but just a feeling of kind of spreading it a little bit. If it's a pleasure in the body, or if it's a memory or something good. And it's like the feeling of sending it out a little bit. What does it feel like just to send a feeling of love then to yourself? Actually, an active act going on here of sending the goodness to myself, not just being in it, but like sort of sending it. And maybe the phrases come in, but use the phrase, but more have the feeling with the phrase. Or if it's to a person, can I, radiating, may I be happy, or I appreciate you in my life, or if it's your pet or anything, use the phrases, but the feeling more and more becomes the object. It's light in the beginning, but this is the beginnings of it. if you like to use phrases to help you just stay present with this, you can see for some people, it shifts the relationship with the phrases because it's not all about the phrases. They're just there as an aid to help you stay connected with the feeling of radiating metta. It's the feeling of radiating metta is the practice. And then if we were to do this, it could be done in many, many ways, but the feeling can grow stronger. And it's with that stronger feeling. It doesn't have to be directed at a person or at an object. It's just the feeling of it radiating out. It's just like you're just glowing from all sides, and like the beams are just radiating all out from you when it gets stronger. It's like that. Could have a visualization component also. And it can also take the form of radiating toward someone or some situation or something. You'll play around with it. So you can see it's a big, this is a kind of a big area of all the ways to do this practice. Okay. I rung the bell because I just want to take a couple of minutes and say a little bit more about this, and also encouraging you that there are recordings you can find. I think it would be, if you try to look it up, it would be, I hope that just gave you the very, very basic intro of guided meditations for radiating metta. I think if you look at radiating metta, look it up. You can find it on Analio. There's probably also some books. I think Analio might have a book about this practice. You can read more about it. And again, I want to just repeat what I said earlier, that I recognize that for some people, it's just hard to get a handle on. What do you mean? I'm feeling it. I'm kind of gin it up a little bit, but it's fake, or I don't know. I can't do it. So you'll know if you relate to it or not that way. I want to just add in one piece here is another way that can work for people is if you sort of don't worry about it. If none of these styles, give it some time and look up some more detailed guided meditations or something. But if none of these seem like they work for you, that's fine. Just go back to whatever your meditation is. And there's ways to meditate that give a little, even if you're doing what we call vipassana or pure insight or mindfulness, there are ways to meditate that can, you keep doing that practice, but a little bit, we bring in a little more emphasis on settling the mind. That's the concentration or samadhi piece. And lots of people find that if we can even a little bit start to deepen in the meditation, that deeper samadhi, it doesn't have to be this mystical, giant, deep thing, but however much you feel like you can start to settle, there's a feeling to that. I don't have time to get into it. It can feel pleasant in the body. There's just the whole experience of samadhi, right out of the samadhi, then it can be very natural to have the radiating feeling of metta coming out of the concentration side. So some people will find the doorway is, let me just do what I call normal meditation without thinking of, you'll still bring metta in to be kind to yourself and all that, but as a practice, let the samadhi be the springboard for you. So I just a name that I realized, how do you do that? We don't have time for all that, but just to keep that in mind. I know this got just crammed in at the end, but it's just the way it worked out. Anyway, I hope that was useful. If not, like, just let it go, right? If it's not useful, and go back to what you know. Anyway, so I think we're up against the clock, yeah. So thank you all. It was nice to. I think I'm done on my on my end.
Yeah, thank you so much, Richard, for coming
Sure,
to join us. And
sure,
we really appreciate your insights into the practice of metta, which is
sure.
such an important practice for all of us to weave that into our daily lives. So, yeah, so it's nice to see you again, and we hope to see you again sometime.
That'd be great.